Hi, everyone. This is Nathan with People's Town Hall. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to the simple idea that our democracy is stronger and better when our lawmakers take regular occasion to meet with and listen to the people they work for, which is their constituents. We are here in Baker County, Oregon, virtually today. We are very much looking forward to the moment when we can do more in-person and possibly in-person and virtual hybrid town halls. Today, we are bringing Senator Ron Wyden from our nation's capital in a conversation with his constituents in Baker County. Senator Wyden, thanks so much for joining us today.
Nathan, thank you. And I so appreciate everybody in Baker County making time for this. And I had really been excited about the prospect of being in Baker County today. I thought it was going to come together. The plan was to get out of DC late on Thursday, fly into Boise, start making my way through Eastern Oregon. And then all of a sudden, the debate on keeping the government open went longer. And as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, I was called to put in some additional time on the effort to cut the Russians off from some of these trade opportunities they've had to feed the war machine. And then all of a sudden the clock just ran out. So I'm sitting at my desk in the Dirksen Senate office building. It is your desk, by the way. It's owned by the people of Oregon, in effect, because you decide who is going to have the honor of representing you. And I just so appreciate this chance. I've had 1,000 in-person town hall meetings, and I'm so, as Nathan said, looking forward to getting back to doing that, because there's no substitute for people being able to hold their elected officials accountable and look them in the eye and talk about what they're interested in or ask a question. And we're going to be going back to that soon. Now, we're going to get on with this, but we do have a little bit of business to do. And that is your public health director, Nancy Staton, is retiring after 32 years of extraordinary service. She's lived in Baker, she's worked in Baker, she served the public health for a very long time. She's got a tremendous passion for the health care and well-being of the people of Baker County. And my guess is that when she started this job, she didn't really anticipate a couple of years like we have all had. And it has been grueling, and the hopes and the tears and so much else to try to handle when you're somebody who's, riding point as the public health director. And Nancy never once shrunk from the challenges. She's always stepped up. And Kathy just thinks Nancy is the greatest thing since night baseball. And I pretty much share that view, because she has been there for the community. And so, Nancy, we've got a little bit of an honor reflecting our appreciation for you. I'm not sure you can fully see it, but it is an American flag flown over the Capitol. And I was just hoping that maybe you'd say a few words before we went to the meeting, because I think we've all understood what a challenge it has been to meet our public health responsibilities, and you have just stepped up again and again, and everybody is so appreciative. So we'd love to hear any thoughts you want to tell us about, and everybody wants to know what you're going to do when you're retired.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. It's quite an honor, and I feel privileged. I think like you said, when I started in public health back in the 80s, I had no idea what I was in for. And, especially the last couple of years have been quite challenging. Public health has been underfunded for decades. And then we were put on the forefront of a pandemic, and we stepped up to the challenge, and it hasn't been without challenges. But I feel like in Baker County, I feel very fortunate and privileged to work alongside many folks in our community, from our hospital, from our schools, from our medical clinics, from our businesses, I just feel very fortunate and blessed to be here. And so, I think our work isn't done. I am retiring, but the work will go on, and we have an amazing team that will continue on. And so, I think hopefully the pandemic will die down. Who's to say what's to come? But we will meet that challenge as well. And thank you for your work with helping with supporting our workforce. And, that continues to be a huge challenge. And the infrastructure and public health and the funding needs to be there for that work to continue, because there will be more opportunities. There'll be more challenges, and we need to be ready to face those as they come. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you again for the incredible service you've given to the community. And I hope you can stay on. So if I get asked some really difficult questions, I can buck some of them over to you. And it would just be great to continue to stay in touch. And thank you for the wonderful, wonderful work. Okay, let's go right to questions, but let's give a big shout out also to Nathan and the folks from People's Town Hall. The idea is, and people always say, well, can I come? And what party should I belong to? And all the rest. The point is just to throw open the doors of government. It's really about digital democracy now until we can get fully up and running with in-person town meetings. And we expect that to be very soon. So thank you to Nathan and all the folks at People's Town Hall, and let's go to it.
Great. And as Senator Wyden said, we do not ask people's party affiliation. We don't ask who you voted for. We don't even ask if you voted. So we just select folks who have substantive questions in Baker County. And first up, we have Mike Trindle in Baker City. Mike?
Yes. Hello, everybody on, and Senator. It's good to visit with you.
Good. We're all kind of leaning into our iPads and devices, and if you can talk a little bit louder, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, I Perfect. Don't have. I'm just on the telephone. That's all I have there, so that's okay.
It's fine. Well, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, less than 2 years ago, we were energy independent, and we were shipping product actually exported. And in the last 2 years, we have changed. We're now importing petroleum and importing energy, and our energy costs have skyrocketed totally. What can we do to get our own production back online? I know that we've shut down exploration in Anwar. We've kind of slowed up the import possibilities with closing down pipelines, and we've stopped leases on our public land. So what can we do, or how do we turn this around before we have fuel that we can't afford to farm with?
Well, you give us a great opening to talk about the topic of the hour. And for example, I'm pushing very hard to make it easier for folks to ensure that domestic minerals are available, because we have depended, for example, so often on Russia and other parts of the world for these minerals. So this week I introduced a very important bill to allow us to tap existing sites in Eastern Oregon. There's a great interest in lithium, for example, and I think that's the kind of win-win situation we ought to be looking at. It allows us to use existing resources, but lithium is a hugely important requirement for electric vehicles and solar and a variety of other uses. So those are the kinds of solutions I'm looking for. And let me give you an example of another win-win kind of approach. I have proposed the Clean Energy for America bill, and it has gotten out of the Senate Finance Committee, where I'm the chair. It was made a part of the Build Back Better legislation, which now is, of course, going through revisions. But the heart of my bill, worked it out with Senator Manchin, is to promote what's called technological neutrality, to give everybody an opportunity to make those energy decisions that's going to help us to be energy independent. It also says that the more you reduce carbon emissions, the greater your tax savings. So for example, someone like Senator Manchin will be very interested in carbon capture, where there are new technologies that are showing very substantial promise. So those are two examples, my bill on domestic minerals, my Clean Energy for America legislation, that I think gives us a chance to take practical steps to make ourselves energy independent, to deal with this challenge just highlighted by the last few weeks, and really give everybody an opportunity to help us hit those objectives. I don't know anybody in Oregon who isn't in favor of reducing carbon emissions. The question is, how do you find the most practical ways to do it? I took the tax code as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee and I threw it in the garbage can. I took the 44 separate breaks and I said, we're going to get that down to 3. We're going to be technologically neutral, which is something that Senator Manchin felt strongly about, and then give everybody a new lodestar, which is reducing carbon emissions. Great question. So important to both our national security and our economic security. Great way to start. Baker County always comes through.
Follow up? I'd like to follow up.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, we're talking about lithium and we're talking about carbon emissions. We're not talking about something that can happen in the next 6 months or 1 year. You're talking down the road. And our energy problem right now, excuse me, you asked me to speak up, but our energy problem right now is at this time. And so what can we do to increase our petroleum production? I don't mean to go buy more petroleum from Venezuela or any other place. We were producing it. We had it going on less than 2 years ago. What can we do right now to get that back online?
Well, it's a very important question. And let me break down what I'm talking about with respect to minerals. I'm talking about first and foremost using existing oil and pipeline leases, ways to deal with energy producing sites. Those are opportunities to use existing leases, and we're trying to do the same with the minerals in terms of trying to tap existing sites. Your point, again, is very, very correct. So if we look at a way to bring together all energy sources with a focus on reducing carbon emissions, that's my Clean Energy for America bill. We look at new kinds of opportunities with respect to domestic minerals and look at existing areas, and then say for existing oil and pipelines, their leases will turn to them for energy production. I think that helps finally to respond to your third question.
Would you be in favor of opening back up the federal lands for oil exploration or more leases?
Well, I would first say, why don't we use the existing oil and pipeline leases? There are a substantial number of them.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but my question is, why aren't we?
Well,
if we had it 2 years ago, why can't we have it now?
We're asking
Mike,
some of the. If not,
let the senator answer your question, Mike.
He's asking a good question, Mike. We're asking the big oil companies right now, why aren't they using the existing leases? In other words, these are leases they have right now, today.
Okay.
They can do exactly what you're talking about. So there's going to be a debate about new leases. I get that. But I thought your question was a very good one. And that is, what are you going to do right now? And the fact is, there are existing oil and pipeline leases that aren't being used to produce energy They're non-producing sites right now, those leases. And I'm going to be asking the big oil companies, how come we're not tapping those first?
Great. Well, thanks.
Excellent answer.
Thanks for the question,
Yeah,
Mike.
thanks very much.
And I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to get to
Mike,
everybody's question.
But Nathan, I want folks to know Mike asked 3 very pertinent questions, and they're all areas that I've thought a lot about. You know, the question of minerals, the question of how you have technological neutrality tied to reducing carbon emissions. And then he said, what are we going to do right now? And I'm in the process of asking the big oil companies, how come they're not using these existing leases? They aren't producing, they could be.
All right. Next up, we have Ginger from Baker City.
Hi, Senator Wyden. My name is Ginger Savage. I am the executive director of Crossroads Carnegie Art Center here in Baker City, Oregon. I'm also a board member of the Cultural Advocacy Coalition for the state of Oregon. I'm the president of the Baker County Cultural Coalition and president of the Baker Historical Society. And my question to you is, right now, there's a suite of about 7 individual bills that are all related to arts, culture, heritage, and humanities going through Congress right now, one of them being the PLACE Act, which is promoting local arts and creative economic workforce act, as well as the Arts Education for All bill that's co-sponsored by Congresswoman Bonamici. And I just wanted to get an update on these bills that will be really transformational, very similar to the WPA at the end of the Great Depression, in revitalizing arts and culture to grow the overall economy. And I'm not sure if I understood, and the second part of that, did the omnibus bill pass, because that included funding for the NEA and the NEH?
The answer to your last question is yes, it did pass. That was what happened late, trying to figure out which night, late a couple of nights ago, which really became Thursday night into Friday morning. That did pass, does have money for those arts programs. And, you know, Ginger, you also raise an important question. I've always thought that arts are one of the areas you should be encouraging, especially at a time like this, when people are looking for new kinds of opportunities. We saw during the pandemic, for example, a lot of people said, you know, we're not going to be exactly like we were before the pandemic. I'm going to go learn some new skills. And I think at that kind of moment, you want to encourage some of these kinds of arts and cultural opportunities, those laws and the 2 agencies you mentioned encourage. Now, some of them, and I think you listed 6 or 7, are also trying to better target tax provisions that deal with charitable donations and the like. And I've told folks, I'm chairman of the finance committee, and that's something I'm very supportive of. I think that charity, again, particularly philanthropy, locally grown philanthropy, which Baker has always, you know, been known for and supportive of artists, is something that really does warrant a kind of public-private partnership, and I'm planning to be supportive of that.
Well, I really appreciate that, Senator. And yes, any support with increasing or expanding the above the line tax deduction, it really made a huge impact in our budget. People really utilized it when they could match it with the Oregon Cultural Trust tax deductions for the state of Oregon. It was really powerful. So we appreciate any support you can give us on arts and culture in the halls of Washington, D.C.
Ginger, let's do this. If you would, to Nathan or Kathleen. Kathy, you know, she's right in the front of my screen. Kathleen is the bionic woman. She lives in LeGrand, but she basically is in her car just bombing around all over rural Oregon. And we can't even figure out how she gets to all these places. And the ultimate compliment is sometimes people come up to me, they see me at Safeway or one of the grocery stores or something like that, and they say, you know, Ron, you know, you're okay. You watch what you're doing. I said, but we really like Kathy. So I know my appropriate place in rural Oregon. But if you could get to Kathleen which of the bills are most important to you? I know there are 6 or 7, and which of them also have a tax connection, so I can review those first, given my position on the Finance Committee.
Will do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Ginger. Next up, we have Marshall from Baker City.
Yeah, hi there, everybody. Before I ask my question, I wanted to mention that last night, Laurel Porter had an interview on her Straight Talk program with our new Oregon House Speaker, Dan Rayfield. And it was a remarkably good interview. It really impressed me. One of the things particularly was about a bipartisan approach, where you can disagree with people in, let's just say, the other party, but that doesn't mean they're an enemy. It means that you can still deal with them with respect. And to me, that spoke a lot about Ron Wyden and his approach. So I wanted to mention how that came up and to say, I really do think we need more bipartisan solutions.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Well, Marshall, thank you for the bouquets. And folks at home are going to get to see some bipartisanship this upcoming week. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee. Mike Crapo, Republican of Idaho, is a senior Republican, very good guy, very, very thoughtful. I always tease him, you know, Mike, you're as conservative as the day is long, and yet you always look to try, like you say, to find solutions and bring people's principled ideas to the fore. We will be on the Senate floor here in a few days, teaming up to deal with this PNTR, Permanent Normal Trade Relations for the Russians. And given their inhumane conduct, I'm of the view, as is Senator Crapo, that the Russians have forfeited their opportunity to enjoy the benefits of the international order established after World War II. So Oregonians are going to get a chance in a few days to see a little bit of the good old-fashioned Pacific Northwest bipartisanship. We used to have a lot more of it, and I'm trying to do everything I can to make sure it gets more traction. And I will also say, apropos of, you know, Marshall's point, you know, bipartisanship is not about taking the other person's crummy ideas and then running around and go, look at me, I am so important, I am being bipartisan. Bipartisanship is about taking good ideas, no matter where they come from. So Senator Crapo and I are also working in a bipartisan way on a major mental health package. I don't have to tell everybody, and I'm seeing my friend Nancy nod. The mental health issue was a serious challenge before the pandemic. It has just gone through the stratosphere. And in rural Oregon, we got a lot of older people, a lot of veterans who've had very serious mental health challenges. A young man out of Lapine, Trace Terrell, testified at one of my recent hearings. And he said that at his high school, 80% of the referrals made on mental health needs from the school to mental health services, more than 80% of them went unanswered. We desperately need, as Nancy just talked about, we need more people, we need more facilities. We got a huge bit of good news here in the last couple of days. Nancy may have caught it on the mental health front, because the Balmers, and Connie was a graduate of the U of O, decided to establish a behavioral health center at the University of Oregon. And we're going to be able to train a lot of young people, so maybe they'll grow up, be like Nancy, and do all this wonderful work. But that was a good bit of news for our wonderful state here in the last couple of days. It just announced 2 or 3 days ago, and Connie Balmer in particular deserves enormous credit. And she does all this charitable work with her husband, Steve, who we also know from Microsoft and the like. So got a lot of work to do, but thank you, Marshall, for hammering home the importance of bipartisanship, because the other point about this is if it's not bipartisan, particularly right now, both sides aren't invested. So if you just get it and you drive it through, what happens is the other side says, we don't have an investment in this. As soon as we're in charge, we're going to go replace it. We're going to go this and that. So this is not just about pretending, oh, I'm terrific and give me an award or something because I say I'm bipartisan. There are really core principles here. It's a longer answer than you wanted, Marshall, but it's really important. Thanks for bringing it up. And Baker County knows a lot about that. We've had for years elected officials, both Democrats and Republicans in Baker County working together.
Well deserved. So what I wanted to ask about is what I see as being a major national structural problem, which is widespread poverty and wealth inequality. And I see it causing us many, many problems right now, and seeing that it maybe is going to get worse. And what I'm referring to is that, like since the mid 70s, computer automation, offshoring has robbed us a whole bunch of jobs, and also robbed us of ability to do wage bargaining, so that the median family income or median wage has remained pretty static, adjusted for inflation over the past 45 years. And people are suffering. And so I'm wanting to see if we couldn't maybe raise that topic and give it more visibility, because I'm just, it's for some strange reason. And I'm wondering if it isn't people are ashamed or afraid of talking about poverty that they're experiencing. Maybe there's stigma attached to it, but I just see that there could be more attention paid to it on a sustained basis. So I'm like, here's a couple of things from Baker City. Is we had a forum here about 5 years ago, where the topic was poverty, and it was brought up that maybe at least 40% of families, working families, cannot make ends meet. And we did role playing on the effect of that, how stressful that is to try to balance your payments so that you're not cut off by everything all the same month. And well, the thing related to that is that we get a weekly report out of the city hall talking about the number of people that are having trouble paying their water bill. And it's been increasing, well, particularly since the pandemic. So it turned out to be, I think it's a major indicator that people are really having a lot of trouble with the economy. Anyway, if you probably remember, President Biden mentioned during the State of the Union that we have people are struggling to make ends meet, working paycheck to paycheck, he said. And so I just see that as, one more indication of a real problem. And maybe a couple other thoughts. One is I'm seeing a lot of stories about homelessness. I think maybe that's related. And I also think really, that January 6th incursion on our Capitol, there was a whole bunch of people in that rally that Trump had that didn't go to the Capitol and didn't storm the Capitol that day. But to me, I think that this issue of poverty is causing a lot of discomfort and a lot of upset and in the country. So anyway, to me, it's a major problem that needs to have more visibility.
It certainly does. And income inequality is not just an issue of the economics and the economic effects of income inequality, but it also has a real implication for democracy. Because when you have so few people have so much money and power and influence, it isn't good for democracy. It's one of the reasons I'm so troubled about the way the campaign finance laws, are set up. Basically, today, the United States Supreme Court says that the poor person's soapbox is really exactly the same as the rich guy's checkbook. It's all protected under the First Amendment. And I think anybody knows that the rich person's checkbook is going to buy a whole lot more speech and content than the poor person's, soapbox. And so these are hugely important issues. And let me give you a couple of thoughts. First, what I always say at the Finance Committee is I want an economic system that gives everybody in America the chance to get ahead. I want everybody to have a chance to get ahead. So, for example, I've been a very strong supporter on the education front of community colleges, which I think really, in many instances, provide a ladder of upward mobility. I'm also a very strong supporter of apprenticeship programs between the private sector, the government providing additional help for the worker. And we're in a pretty interesting time as it relates to workers, because we've all seen that wages have been going up. The worker has some opportunities to have a little bit more influence in terms of bargaining. And so the question really now, particularly as we deal with inflation, Marshall, is how to make sure that there's an opportunity for both increased productivity and increased wages. If increased wages are accompanied by increased productivity, that's a win-win. That's a win for the worker. That's a win for our country. Now, here are a couple of other ideas that I want to put into the mix. One of the things I see at the Senate Finance Committee is how broken the federal tax code is. And let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. Today, in Baker or Grant or anywhere else in Eastern Oregon, a firefighter or a nurse at the local hospital, they pay taxes with every single paycheck. Their taxes are not optional. But I'm sure a lot of people have been reading, that's not the way it is for the billionaires. The billionaires can basically not take an income. They won't take a paycheck, and they just live on what is actually described as buy, borrow, and die. If you do those three things, you can have a wonderful lifestyle and pay little or no taxes for years on end. It's all legal. The scandal is really what's legal. And so I have proposed, as part of this effort, to ensure we have a country where everybody has an opportunity to get ahead. I proposed the billionaire's income tax, where in effect, billionaires like those firefighters and nurses in Baker County would have to pay something every year to help us deal with basic fairness and tackle the implications for inequality, where billionaires go for years paying little or no federal taxes and not having that revenue go for things like community colleges and training and the like. And a pretty good example of something that gives everybody a chance to get ahead is through our committee, we put forward the expanded child tax credit, giving parents extra financial support to address the high costs of raising kids is a way for families of modest means to get ahead. That's not pulling anybody else down. Nothing I'm talking about has pulled anybody else down. I'm talking about giving everybody the opportunity to get ahead.
So can I mention, that the child tax credit was a pretty good example of the sort of income supplement that might pull a whole bunch of people up and give them a chance to realize themselves and not lead lives in need. And so, like a universal basic income, some such thing as that. In other words, I'm really hoping that there could somehow be a concerted focus on really bringing people out of poverty.
Well, I really like the child tax credit because it focuses on young people, which are the kids getting started. And I've also favored an expansion of the earned income tax credit, which was originally something Republicans were for, and we reward work. So let's build on those kinds of ideas.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Marshall. Next up, we have Mark.
Good afternoon, Senator Wyden.
Hey, Mark, great to see you.
It's a beautiful day in Baker City, and I'm not lying this time.
I've had many a great day in Baker City, just strolling down kind of Main Street, buying an ice cream and visiting with people.
I guess first and foremost, I wanted to thank you that on behalf of Baker Technical Institute for the investment in additional heavy equipment and trucking and logistics that was put into the bill that was recently passed. And we see that, and my board definitely sees this as an investment in workforce development and a way to go ahead and give family or have people be able to earn family wages so they can support themselves and their kids. And so, very appreciative of that. I can assure you that those dollars will be well invested, and they'll be all over Oregon doing trainings over the next number of years. And we can't keep up, by the way, with the heavy equipment trucking. The demand is higher than what we can keep up with, which is great because these are high. Once somebody graduates from these programs, they're high-wage jobs. Our biggest challenge actually is to keep instructors, because after somebody gets this training, they oftentimes make more than the instructor right out of the gate. So, but it's really nice that we are grateful, truly, that you were able to get that done. And then Senator Wyden.
Mark, before you leave that, so, I am very supportive of your terrific school district vocational programs and truck driving schools and truck driving school and nurses assistants. I'm just curious. I was very supportive of the provision in the BIF bill that was quite controversial, that would allow for the pilot program to go out and train the younger people. I think it started at 18 to be truck drivers.
Yes.
Chance to make better wages, and it was a pilot. And
yes.
Oh my God, the people on both of the extremes that said, some people were conservatives, said, oh, the government doesn't need to do anything. And some people on the other side said, oh, what's going to happen if we have these kids get the training? And I said, look, everybody, this is a pilot project, and it's going to be very carefully monitored, and the people who are involved are being screened and all this kind of thing. Tell me how you all locally are using that program. And I know it's just kind of getting going.
Well, it's a huge program. It's going to be a huge program and very successful. So right now, as you, I think, know, Baker Technical Institute delivers quite a bit of training to adults, but we also, across Oregon, we serve 20 high schools in providing technical training around heavy equipment, just a number of different aspects of what we can go mobile with. Well, when the regulation changed so that we can start training truck driving at 18, those schools that we're currently servicing, and there's more and more of them every 6 months or so, more to get the word of mouth that, hey, this is a way that we can really get students an opportunity to get wages right out of high school. Well, there's a demand for it, Senator Wyden. The high schools that we're working with is say, hey, you're doing this, this, and this. We want that truck driving opportunity embedded with the other trainings that you're providing. And so, yeah, there definitely is a demand. And, I've said probably too many times that, technical skills, high skills, can pay really good wages. And not everybody needs to have this idea of going to a university and getting a four-year degree or a master's degree that can be quite expensive for the outlay of it. So very supportive, and thank you. That's opened up other opportunities and certainly high demand within the schools we serve across Oregon.
And 2 points, Mark. Continue to keep us up on the the data, because I think this is going to turn out to be a really attractive idea. And, you know, just as you touched on about what a student might be interested in. Look, I see my job as trying to create options for students and families. There may be a young person who wants to go and pursue, you know, trucking. There are others who have interests in dramatically different fields. It's my job to create those kinds of opportunities. So tell me, you said the first thing you said, it was a beautiful day in Baker. What's the temperature?
I think it was 58 when I came down here, and that's the warmest I can remember it in a long time. I still do have snow on the north side of my house, but still, it's quite comfortable outside. And then Senator Wyden, I appreciate what Marshall had been saying about the inequities that we're finding within our communities. And I think nowhere more has that occurred than in rural America, or at least that's what I can see, because that's where I live. And I have served in Ontario, Adrian, Grant School District, McKinsey School District, and now Baker School District. And in each of these communities, there's somewhere between 60% that of our young children that qualify for free and reduced to 75%. And so where we find a lot of the poverty is, frankly, within our youngest families. And so there's quite a burden on those families as they try to go through. Then I want to make the point that in an education of a child, the capacity of the family is a major part of that equation. So the more capacity that a family has, the more that child has exposure and opportunity. And so from Baker School District's board perspective, economic vitality is directly related to our mission. If we can improve economic vitality, which BTI is one component of that, the Baker Early Learning Center is another outcrop of that mission in trying to create opportunities for our young families. It helps us to get more students graduated, and it helps us to keep more students engaged in school because those capacities and those families improve. So and I've probably thrown you this question 3 times, but I'll throw it to you again just for fun. You know, when I grew up in Adrian, Oregon, on a farm, you know, there was more economic power in rural Oregon in the 1960s and early 70s than there is currently. The disparity between those that are making it okay and those that are really struggling, as Marshall had pointed out, to pay their water bill or pay their utilities or pay the rent in Baker and rural counties is pretty challenging. And so I know you think about these issues and in a thoughtful and a policy and a strategic way, but I keep wanting to come back to what can we do? What can you do as a U.S. Senator to have a comprehensive plan to reinvigorate rural Oregon and really rural America, so that we can have these families earn a living that they can then support their children and grow their children and you know, share in the American dream. That's kind of bottom line. We need family wages, and it's been challenging in rural America for the last 3 decades.
Yeah, you know, Mark, we could spend the rest of the evening on it, but let me kind of walk through what I think some of the pieces of the puzzle are for rural Oregon, and you can add and subtract and the like. First, it's important that we understand the connection between urban and rural. I mean, my God, we do a lot of things well in our state, but one of the things we do best is we grow things. And you grow them mostly in rural Oregon. But what do? You ship them through more metropolitan areas. 1 out of 3 jobs in our state has something to do with international trade. And the trade jobs often pay better wages than the non-trade jobs, which means it's unifying, and right away in 1 sentence, Mark, just 1 sentence, we capture the urban-rural connection, okay? Now, the second is we got to have elected officials who are committed to building on that. So I often say, you know, I'm from Portland. I got a college basketball scholarship. Wish I could have played in the NBA. At 6'4", I was too small, and I made up for it by being really slow. I love my hometown. There are a lot of things we can talk about that need to be changed as well, because we've seen all that. But Mark, I'm not a United States Senator from the state of Portland. I'm a United States Senator to represent every single nook and cranny in Oregon, which is why when nobody had ever done it before, I said I'm going to have an open meeting every county every year. Nobody had ever done it before, just to be able to start framing a better answer to the question. So you need urban and rural connections around real issues like trade. And then you got to have elected officials who are willing to show up and say, we're going to roll up our sleeves and we're going to go after these kinds of specific answers. Now, there are some real pieces to the puzzle that I think feed a breakout moment for the rural part of the state. Right up at the top of it is broadband, because if we're gonna have more high skill, high wage jobs, you can't have big league economic growth with little league infrastructure. So whenever I'm driving around, which is what I was hoping to be doing all day long, you know, going through rural Oregon today, I lose a connection, it seems like every 10 minutes. So if we're gonna really have the game plan that you've talked about, I mentioned people showing up, I mentioned international trade, I mentioned broadband. Those are key pieces of the puzzle. The next one I would put up at the top is healthcare, because you can't have rural life if you don't have rural healthcare. And rural healthcare is a double winner, because you have jobs, as Nancy knows, where you can make a wage and support, you know, your family, and you have a big economic attraction because folks who are retiring want to come to wonderful places to live, like Baker County. What is the first question they are going to ask? Do you have decent health care? How are you doing on that? So that would be an additional point. So I'm just going to continue to tick off a few more. Housing and infrastructure. If you're going to invest in areas, which is what I've been trying to do with the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we've already talked about some of the pieces of it. And as chairman of the Senate Finance Committee, I'm looking for ways to make housing more affordable. I've been cutting red tape. You know, one of the ways we're cutting red tape, my digital signatures law means that when you're dealing with property and buying a house or something like that, no longer do you sit in your lawyer's office for, you know, hours filling out forms, but once you sign your name, you click all the way through your documents. So those are some of the pieces of the puzzle, and there are going to be other strengths. I happen to think we've got another magnet in the recreation economy. People love the chance to be outdoors. Baker County, it's already a significant part, you know, of the economy and the investments. And I think there are ways that we can build on that. You know, I've been promoting the River Democracy Act, because I think that's an attractive way to bring everybody together. So those would be some of the pieces of the puzzle. And by the way, she didn't get to come tonight, but Jenny Moe is a friend and I'm a great fan, you know, an Oregon Duck. And the reason she couldn't come tonight is she was making cheesecake, because there seemed to have been a big occasion, and Kathleen is a friend. So there's wonderful people who are making a real commitment to Baker County and the community, and we want to find ways to bring them more into these approaches.
Just a quick follow-up, Senator Wyden. I've kind of paying attention, and Senator Romney has talked about some things that would help young families with childcare and those types of opportunities. And as he spoke about it, it was as he felt as if that was something that would be bipartisan and have strong support. And I just want to give you a little bit of lens from our view. We've worked with the YMCA to create more childcare spots for babies and then going on up to 5 years old. Well, the cost of that is $973 per child for a child from 0 to 3, or well, essentially 3 months to 3 years old. $973 a month. And my beginning teachers struggled making that payment. I would think Nancy, some of her employees would definitely struggle. And just to consider, you might have 2 children. And we just live in an economy that, right, wrong, or indifferent, it feels as if you have to have 2 wage earners in the home. And so, affordable childcare, it's not there yet. We really, I think that's a place we need to address. And I see it as an economic issue, because you can't get to the workforce and earn money for your family if you don't have high quality, affordable childcare.
Another very important point, Mark. And what I can tell you is you won't have very many Democrats use this word, but I'm a supply sider when it comes to childcare. We need to build more. We need to build more childcare units, because of course now we don't have enough, which is a loser all around, because we need more, but also the inability to have more bumps up the prices, because you've constricted supply, and there are fewer opportunities for people, and the price goes up. So I'm trying to use the finance committee in this upcoming retooling of the Build Back Better effort to get more childcare, and the focus has got to be certainly increasing supply. And for the short term, what I'm hearing is a lot of churches are willing to say, if they had a little bit of help, they got a basement or something, they can pretty quickly, in a matter of months, not years, have a modest kind of set of changes in their basement or something, and start taking care of kidlets, and do it in a way that ensures the kids are safe and well cared for.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Mark. Next up, we have Mike Higgins.
Was Mike the gentleman who asked a question before?
That was a different Mike. That was Mike Trindle.
A different Mike.
Two mics today.
There's all kinds of mics out here in the boonies.
Mike Higgins, you're on.
Well, first of all, Senator, I'd like to thank you for your courage and determination and all the effort you put into the River Democracy Act. It's something that, I grew up in Hereford, Oregon, which is just outside of Baker. And the only entertainment we had out there when I was growing up was to go out in the hills and run around and go fishing and that sort of thing. So this is definitely a great thing, in my opinion. And we, after I ask my main question here, you'll understand why. But before I get away from it, I'd also like to thank Nancy Staton for all of her service to Baker County. I went to school with Nancy's folks at St. Francis Academy, and so that does make me old enough to have some wrinkles. But it's Nancy is a great person, and there's no surprise when you take a look at her parents. She's just, a chip off the old block, as I say.
Nancy for president.
Pardon me?
Nancy for president.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I see that I can't start the video, and you're probably lucky, because you won't have to put up with my all of my wrinkled face here.
Oh,
But
go ahead.
okay, my first question has to do with what is the plan for getting global warming and climate change back on the top of the priority list for issues that we humans need to deal with in light of the situation now with the Ukraine and all of the mess that's going on over there. It's deservedly getting people's attention, and it needs to be up there. But the long-term prospects for continued life on this planet are equally as important. And in my opinion, they should be so far up the list that there is nothing even close. If we don't address climate change, and you're well aware of all these things, I know, but what kind of a plan do you or any of your congressional colleagues have once this Ukraine thing gets settled, and we certainly hope it's soon, to put climate change back there in the position it deserves?
Yeah. Well, Mike, you're certainly right in my view about how serious this problem is. If you look at what we were dealing with last summer in Oregon, outside our home in southeast Portland, you know, it was 115 degrees out. And then if you went a little bit further to an area where it was a neighborhood of folks of very modest means, they didn't have any kind of tree shelter at all. And temperature was like, according to the experts, 120. So I'm of the view this is a very, very serious issue. And we started in talking about it with the other Mike, maybe an hour or so ago, and my Clean Energy for America bill, which says for the first time, the federal tax code would be tied specifically to reducing carbon emissions, which are clearly major driver in climate change, is, I think, transformative. It's a game changer. The way to really tackle this is to create some fresh incentives, and taxes and pricing are right at the heart of it. The independent experts who have looked at our bill, for folks that are following this, the official title is the Clean Energy for America Act. It is passed the Senate Finance Committee. We had hearings on it. We had a full, what's called a markup, where you actually process the legislation, many amendments from both sides of the aisle. And this would be completely different from economic approaches in the past. Normally, energy policy was somebody important would ask their senator to go get them a tax break for whatever they were doing. And the tax breaks got handed out like they were lollipops. Those days are over.
Yeah.
I took the tax code that allowed that and threw it in the trash can. And we're saying from here on in, the more you reduce carbon emissions, a big central driver of climate change, the bigger your tax savings. And we're working with a lot of rural ag groups as well on this and a number of other issues with respect to drought and water conservation, and bringing everybody in to the climate change debate in that way. So your question was very good and very timely. And shoot, if there's another lesson from what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, is we got to get serious about climate change. And I just gave you a market-oriented, approach where everybody, and technology neutrality is so key, because people don't even know 20 years from now what are going to be the best technologies for reducing carbon emissions. So we've gotten widespread support from scientists and economists who've looked at this issue across the political spectrum.
Thank you for that answer. I also have a brief question, and this addresses something that Marshall and you discussed earlier, and Mark Whitty also touched on, and that is the need for some type of, any type actually, of industry or whatever that we might bring to Eastern Oregon. A group of us started about 20 years ago on the idea of developing a hiking trail around Baker and Grant and whatever, Union County, Wallowa County. And that has finally, last year before, the Greater Hells Canyon Council, which was formerly Hells Canyon Preservation Council, that I'm sure you're aware of, we came up with an idea that would put that trail started over in Wallowa County at the trailhead there where Wallowa Lake, and end up in John Day, and in the process hike 530 miles. But in that process, you will get your pack ready. Okay, Senator Wyden. Anyway, it touches in 7 different wilderness areas, plus the Hells Canyon Recreation Area. It is a beautiful trail. I've hiked almost all of it myself, but not at one time. We did have last summer a couple of different groups that, well, and plus Renee Patrick from the Oregon Natural Desert Association. She did it by herself in one whack. And I don't think, Marshall, that this is going to be the panacea for the economy of Baker County, but I see it as an opportunity to get people here, to get them out on that trail. My theory has always been that people protect what they love. And definitely, if you can get folks out there on that, they will love the place, just as we do. And so, as I said, I don't think it's going to be the panacea for everything, all the economic needs that we have here in the county, but every little bit helps. And so I'd like to add one more thing, and that's a thank you to Kathleen Cathy. She is a gem, and I don't know how you hold on to her, but you better watch before somebody headhunter comes along and takes her away from you. Great woman, and thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Mike, and you're absolutely right. Kathleen is just extraordinary, and we all in the office, if there's something that comes up in Eastern Oregon, everybody says, and Kathleen probably winces when she hears it, said, God, this is really serious, but Kathleen can take care of it. And thank you for doing that. And look, on your trail, I'll have my hiking boots ready to go. We'll be ready to cover a part of it. I think I'm going to sign up for a slightly smaller share of the trek than 530 miles. But the point is, that was part of what I was touching on with Mark, is I think recreation is a big time economic engine for our state. And that's what Travel Oregon is all about. That's what a number of the shops and the hotel on Main are all about. They're, huge draws because people hear about them from their friends who come to town, and then they all over America, and they say, this is a place that is really special. So I think you put it in the proper perspective. People aren't saying that's your entire economic development agenda, but it's a real piece that can make a difference. And that's how I look at it.
Thank you very much, Senator, and thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Mike. And last, but certainly not least, we have Councilor Peter Hall from Haines.
Yes, nice to talk to you again, Senator. But I wanted just to give a brief little statement saying that I am running for governor as a Democrat from
Peter, just one thing. One of the things we've decided 1,000 town hall meetings ago is that these are official meetings and not campaign meetings.
No,
so
I'm not.
If I could be there in person, what I'd say is, hey, Peter, always enjoy talking with you. We'll talk about the politics when the meeting is over. But I just want to kind of say, if you could sort of steer this towards the things you're working on, and maybe we'll get the politics another time.
Right, I wasn't going to be talking about politics. I just wanted to let you know that I was doing that. I know how to stay away from that. Even at the any kind of meetings I have with Democrats, I always don't push that at all, because that would be it wouldn't be correct. But what I did want to talk about was along with climate change, is we're going to have severe drought, and it's here to stay. Essentially, just like we had sort of the Rust Belt back in the Midwest, we're basically going to have a drought belt here in the West. And we're going to have a lot of people push, just like we have people talk about Greater Idaho, where they're not going to move to Idaho. They're going to make Idaho move to them. We're going to have a big push for people to say, we need water, and you're going to have to move the water to us. But there's still going to be high populations that areas are just going to be unsustainable. So there's going to be a problem of not having enough water. And also we might say climate refugees moving away from some areas, especially like Los Angeles or Phoenix. And we're going to have to be prepared for some of that. So what do you think the federal government can do to deal with what is coming, that is creation of the drought belt?
Well, Peter, first of all, I think you're spot on in talking about the importance of water and getting resources to rural Oregon, to farmers and ranchers with historic drought and communities. And we were involved with you all at the city of Haines with the $1 million, getting the $1 million to upgrade the Haines water system. And I think you're absolutely right about stressing the importance, of it. Got to make sure farmers and rural communities know what resources are available to deal with this kind of extreme weather. In the bipartisan infrastructure bill, we were able to get $5 billion to try to help respond to drought and a number of the conditions with respect to ag. And that bill includes key parts of my Water for Conservation and Farming Act to fund the Bureau of Rec to improve water infrastructure in the West, water storage, provide resources to plan for future droughts. And also, in the last farm bill, I was able to get a soil health program at the Department of Agriculture to create incentives for farmers to implement soil health conservation. And there are a lot of ag folks who want to make this permanent. So this whole question of water and water for communities and their water systems and for farmers is hugely important. You can't have life in the rural West without water. And I think we all understand we are really up against it in terms of a shortage.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Counselor. Well, thank you, everybody. We went a little over our hour, but we had so many incredibly substantive questions. Appreciate everybody who is watching on YouTube and Facebook for your attention and the vibrant comment section as we see. Sorry we did not get a chance to take any of the online questions, but we will be back next week with a couple more town halls with Senator Wyden. In the meantime, Senator Wyden, any final words for us?
Yeah, I'm going to give a lengthy closing address, probably a couple of hours. And Marshall looks a little worried at this point, but no, I'm not giving any long closing addresses. I just want to say thank you to Baker County. There are a lot of things folks could have been doing. Mark noted right at the beginning, that's a really pretty day at home. A lot of things you could be doing besides educating me. So I just appreciate everybody participating. There was not a bad comment in the House today. Congratulations, Baker County. Not one single comment that wasn't addressing a really important issue. And look, I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to. I can cast a vote at 11 o'clock in the morning on the floor of the Senate. My wife, Nancy, calls up and talks a couple of hours later and said, "You really blew that one, Buster. That wasn't very smart. You should have done this and that." And very often I think about it and she probably is right. So what I do know, though, having said I don't have all the answers, the best way to do this job, and Mark talked about it when he was talking about rural Oregon, is to do everything I can to bring urban and rural Oregon together. That's why we talked about it when Mark raised that question. And to me, particularly when I'm having an in-person town meeting or this, and I so appreciate people doing it, we all would rather do it in person, is Oregon and Baker County specifically is a long way from Washington, D.C. And I think often a lot of folks think Washington, D.C. might as well be Mars for all the connection it really has to their lives on a day-to-day basis. So what I'm trying to do is shorten the distance, shorten that 3,000 mile plus distance between Oregon and Washington, D.C. Baker County, you really hit it tonight. It wasn't a bad point in the house, and I'm just going to make sure that these conversations are in the to be continued department. Nathan, big thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. See you next time.